Tariffs. Let me mute this. All right, should be good. Is it Cole or Murray? What's up, partner? I'll let people pop on here.
You want to pull up a Bitcoin chart? Let's see what's going on.
Yeah, I got BTC up right now.
Oh, you do, yeah.
I would just say, today coming in the markets, global macro, it's tariff headline after tariff headline. Stocks are up. The media wants to anchor on tariffs. Stocks are down. The media wants to anchor on tariffs. So that's going to be the narrative. I don't really see what's going to change there as far as global macro. Still the most dominant force is a strong dollar. So it's going to continue to affect emerging markets, going to continue to affect commodities, oil. But that's where all the energy's been in. And then obviously we had a pretty big drop over the weekend. This is one of the first weekends in a while where let me bring up the futures chart so see. This is, I guess, most of the weekends we've kind of closed the futures on Friday and then they rallied the cash market just to see futures gap up. And then we had the reverse finally this last weekend where cash market sold off, and then we had this pretty good gap down in futures. It's, you guys can read the headlines as to why the drop. I guess we can get into it, but from a trend and cycle perspective, you can see by the bands here on this 4 hours done a pretty good job. That's why I like to use it, because it does give a pretty good visual of when the momentum and the trend changes. So we like to watch the technical structure, which was in an uptrend until you broke the lows right here. And then the bands kind of rolled over back in the middle of May. But every time we get a rally, we just made lower highs. And we failed again at the bands last week, right into 7,500, 7,600. So we still have this intermediate term downtrend within the context of the bigger picture uptrend. And then, looking at the volumes in futures since they've came out, I think this is the 26th week that CBOE and CME futures have been trading. And this was the lowest volume-wise, and as terms of volatility, we were a couple of weeks ago, we were still down as far as volatility on the week, but it was like a 21% range. The week before was 7%, and then it looks like I didn't really see the data since Friday, but it was like down to 5%. So the energy's been really lacking. The volume's been very light. And I'm pretty sure that the correlation between volatility and the price of Bitcoin is actually inverse. So a lot of markets, when we break S&Ps down, for example, like the riskier markets, when you break the Nikkei down or you break the S&P down, well, volatility tends to spike, right? So the VIX will actually rally. Here, I think most of the listeners, everybody that follows this stuff or follows markets gets this, but the S&P, the way it's measured based on the overall index, and it tracks a lot to do with the option volatility, but you get the big spikes up in volatility when you get the sell-offs. Well, it's the opposite in Bitcoin, because it's been so bullish that all the big BTC rallies, we've seen the volatility blow out. So the moves on the up have been a lot bigger. And then when we're obviously down here near the lows, it seems like the range is really just narrow. pretty quiet action. Now, if you break 6,000, you probably will see some pretty big volatility. I mean, that's definitely a risk. We're right back down here. Whether you want to call it a triple bottom, inverse head and shoulders, this is pretty much an inverse. It's pretty much a triple or quadruple bottom. It's the same bottoming formation though. But the key is that you don't know if this is going to break down to new lows. You don't know if this is going to consolidate and have more bottoms here through the summer. But the first sign that a market's going to turn is you stop going down. That's always the first sign, right? We call that phase 2 in the bottoming process. Here you had lower lows. This is a lower low. And then here it was like, oh, okay, maybe we finally bottomed, stopped going down. We'll see. And then we failed to make a lower low so far. But the key to watch on the upside is you got to start making higher highs. And then you're not going to get that until you get back above 10,000. And then maybe we can officially call a new uptrend on the intermediate term and you finally get some momentum.
So how do you think it correlates to the volume being so low? I know it's higher than it was the last time it was down at these levels, but
I just part of it's the summer, but part of it is just, I think a lot of the energy comes, everyone is so bullish. There's so much speculation, and I don't know if I'll call it hype, but I mean, there's a lot of enthusiasm for a lot of right reasons, right? So when Bitcoin is breaking out, which we haven't seen futures have really been only around since this intermediate term weakness at the start of the year. But if we go look at the cash chart, I was going to do this. I just never have time, it seems like, to do anything other than trade and train these days. But if we look at the volatility and we go back at the cash chart, we probably will have this correlation that as soon as you break out to new highs, I mean, the energy, the momentum just comes into this market that the ranges really blow out. On the upside, it's not so much on the downside.
Yeah.
But that said, what else are you guys trading? I mean, I did buy some salt today. That really got kind of crushed. Let me switch over to another screen. I'm trading a little bit of euro on the short side today. Euro versus the pound. I just sold some euros up here on the 15-minute. I've kind of got one eye on the FX. Dollar's kind of perking up the last 15 minutes. What's up, John? Just small coins. What do you think about the dark pools like Ren? Phillips asking. That's kind of a good question. Alec, do you have a view on that project or that protocol, the Ren?
I don't really know a lot about the Republic protocol, but I think just dark pools in general. I mean, I think they're playing like a decentralized dark pool protocol, which I think there's a need there because people just can't find buyers and sellers.
Yeah.
And a lot of that's not showing up on the charts right now. You can't see that sort of movement.
Well, I think there's a lot of demand in this space as far as that goes. I mean, right now, pretty much all the exchange trading is mostly retail.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to take a while for the bigger guys to get in and start making markets. And I mean, I know when I traded treasuries, everybody wants to say they have some sort of dark pool. And so, Citi would call me and like, hey, why don't you trade off of our platform? We'll plug you into all these different pools and give you excess liquidity. And that's okay. I mean, all the providers, ECN providers, kind of want to all do the same. It's nothing revolutionary, but there's definitely probably some opportunity to get ahead of a lot of old Wall Street on that stuff, especially if you can do it in a decentralized manner. I think that's where the industry should go. I mean, this coin's pretty good. It's actually making higher highs and higher lows compared to a lot of the other coins like we talk about. The majors are still trapped making lower highs. Well, this coin's been making higher highs and higher lows for a while now. You really got to watch this 88 cent level.
Mm-hmm.
If you take that out, Phil, then maybe you got to you got to be open to the fact that you could drop at least back to 6 cents or kind of back to where this first bull market's the first part of this bull run started. You definitely kind of want to see that hold. It's probably going to coincide with whether or not the market BTC holds 6,000.
I think we're kind of seeing that all around the board where these exchange tokens just aren't getting hit as hard because, people are always going to trade no matter if the market's going up or down.
Yeah. And they're making so much money. And, they're probably of all the projects in the space, I mean, I would argue the exchange are making the most money, right?
Oh, yeah.
If not the only ones making the money. So like BNB, I think that was actually up today, right?
I think so. A small percentage at least.
I mean, that's pretty impressive. So this has been one of the strongest charts. Obviously, EOS, I mean, who knows if what they're doing, is the right thing or if they're going to be around or if they're going to be able to do what they say they're going to do.
Yeah.
They really took out this low here at 12 3/4, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, their exchange, their launch had a few hiccups.
That's pretty interesting. That kind of snuck up on me. So 11 cents. Where's a better exchange to view this on?
Yeah, crypto gone. I think there's a lot of people have a lot of things invested now. It's a little bit different than it was in 2014 when we had a crash. There's a lot more invested in this space right now. A lot more infrastructure, a lot more money, just a lot more time and energy. They don't want to see it go all the way down.
No. And it's still really hard to hedge too. I mean, at least we have the features now.
Mm-hmm.
But we still have no options market. Everybody's pretty much on the long side.
That's a good point.
Well, let's just hit on the majors real quick.
Yeah, then we can hit on some news.
Yeah, I want to kind of look at like the spreads between Bitcoin Cash and BTC. So I added a little bit yesterday, and the way I'm playing this is I want to have more exposure on the long side as we back up against the 6,000. So I'm okay with getting really aggressive right into these lows, maybe even a little bit lower in case you run the stops like down to 5,000, call it. Get really aggressive into here. If we can't hold 5,000, then I'll probably cut 80% of my risk and wait and see, just in case the market does want to do a crazy last flush out to like 2,500. I don't think that'll happen, but your mindset has to be anything's possible, right? So if I'm gonna get fully invested and aggressive and actually even probably leveraged up long via the futures, then I gotta know where I'm wrong. So I think we got a good shot at holding 6, right? This is kind of that same triple bottom that we were looking at in futures. And market likes to go where the most pain is. So I can see the market going below the February lows and running a bunch of stops and then coming right back up. It's just how markets trade. So we kind of got to watch for that. But if you almost anticipate that and you're willing to buy a little bit deeper into that territory, I think that makes sense. So that's kind of where I'm going to play this. Because when we go to the weekly level, this is essentially we're still holding the long-term trend, right? So this is the area that the market, if it's going to hold its uptrend, this is kind of where it's going to do it. And I mean, these are areas. So the last thing I want to do is like some of these YouTube, I guess, quote unquote, self-proclaimed technicians. They're gonna draw some crazy trend line. If this breaks, tell everybody it's bearish, and then pick a place like it's going to 2,000, and they want to get short right underneath that low. I think it's where you got a good chance of getting trapped. So you want to think of these as areas and not like razor sharp levels. That's kind of goofy. So this is the area I think we want to see hold. If you can't hold that on a daily and then weekly level, then you got to actually think about, well, you know, in our model, usually there's a 200 down here and or there's a pie line. And when you break the bands or you break the higher lows, you tend to get that deeper pullback. So that's kind of where the risk is. You might be able to see it on the monthly level. Yeah, so here on the bands, the lower band is like 2685. If I have a longer term.
Hey, someone's asking about why you use Chardon versus USD. I mean, it's pretty much why we're trying to make dollars here, right? I mean, everything's kind of still in dollars.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it matters too much, but you just kind of like go ahead.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I can show you guys a couple of things on salt as an example. But at the end of the day, unless you think Bitcoin is going to completely usurp the entire financial industry, where dollars and euros and yen and is no longer going to exist, then you got to ask yourself, what is money? And right now, Bitcoin is not money. It's trading on the asset side. So we're pricing Bitcoin in dollars. So it's kind of silly to make the case that Bitcoin is a currency that it's going to replace the dollar, but yet it's priced in dollars. Doesn't really make any sense. But what we're trying to do is buy low, sell high, make a good investment because it will return more dollars in the future. So we got to measure this in terms of money. You can measure it in terms of euros, or you could measure it in terms of yen or won. But that's just the currency that I trade in. And so, yeah, has the dollar lost 75% of its value long term? Absolutely. But when, for example, salt, guys, if salt pulls back in the last 2 days like 8%, when you measure it in dollars, Bitcoin's had a correction also, but if you measure it in Bitcoin, because it hasn't gone down as much, you only have a 4% correction. Well, what's really going on there? Is salt collapsing or is your BTC collapsing? Well, it's the salt is going down more than BTC, but the point is that if I have more dollars, I can buy more salt because it's had an 8% pullback. If I'm measuring my asset in BTC, well, okay, there might be times where BTC is really overvalued or has had a pretty good run, and then you definitely want to be raising dollars in that situation, because I gotta show it on the chart. But before I get to that point, looks like the risk, if we don't hold 6,000, we don't hold 5,000, is probably a drop back towards the bands, 2,500, and that's kind of where the market broke out from, and then went 10x. Pretty much, right? 2020. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying that's the risk. So that's kind of how I'm going to play. I'm going to get heavy right here into 5, and then I won't give it much room below 5. If it can't hold that, I'll just go to the sidelines and wait, because maybe we get a shot at buying twice the amount lower if it doesn't hold. But yeah, no, to the point on salt. So here's the example. It's a little bit easier if you visualize it. Like I just want to be concerned with what is the actual asset doing. And it's hard to tell what the supply and demand and what the shares or the coins of salt is actually doing if I'm measuring it in BTC, and BTC is having a 20% move either direction. That doesn't really give me the true movement of salt. But if I measure it in something like Tether is not rallying 20 and 30%. It's pretty much fixed. Same thing with the dollar. My dollars don't buy more or less down at the gas station or at the restaurant this week than they did last week. Longer term, is it holding its value? Absolutely not. But when I'm talking about getting in and out and trading around these 8 to 10, 20% moves, you much rather do that in dollars. So if you sold salt well, and you raise dollars instead of Bitcoin, okay, let's say you made some sales up here. We sold into this pop here at 350, 360. There's a time where you would want to swap salt for BTC when you're bullish on Bitcoin. But if you sold your salt up here for BTC and BTC experiences the same 20% or 10% correction, whatever, pick your number. Point is that it has an intermediate term drop. You're not going to be able to buy this as much salt when you sold because your BTC is dropped like a rock. But if you raise dollars or Tether, which holds its, Tether should hold its value in theory. We could talk about why it could wake up and be 50 cents on the dollar. But the point is that if you have dollars and you get this big of a move, then you've got those same amount of dollars to come in and buy much more salt. You can buy more salt with those dollars than you could with BTC because BTC's gone down. Now you get to a place where you like Bitcoin, like 6,000, then maybe you don't want to, you don't want to sell your BTC and necessarily come and buy alts because you're bullish on BTC. I like trading mostly in dollars if you can, because it's usually if the market's going to pull back, it's because both the alts and BTC are going down. But there's times where the reverse might be true, where something really takes off and Bitcoin's still lagging behind. So you're bullish on BTC. It's basically like selling your salt, going to dollars, and using those dollars either to buy more BTC or not. But you got to do it when you're bullish, when your timing's right on BTC, not just blindly doing it. And that's like, because what if you took a good rally on salt and then you swapped it to Bitcoin at 19,000 BTC? How are you doing on trading this intermediate term bear market? You're going to sit through a 50% drawdown on your buying power, on your capital. The guys that are in dollars, that sat on dollars, are the ones that are going to be cleaning up on this next rally because they could buy, their purchasing power went up as the asset went down. That's the equation I keep talking to people about. Assets are on one side, money is on the other side. So when you get the asset falls, if you're in dollars or you're sitting on money, that purchasing power rises. That's part of the cycle. That'll always be true. It doesn't matter what money is, it will always rise and fall versus assets, the purchasing power. So if assets collapse and you're sitting in dollars, you can come in and buy a shitload more of whatever asset you like. But if you swap to BTC at 17,000, 18,000, 19,000, and BTC experiences the same drawdown, you're not experiencing that same windfall from the appreciation in the purchasing power. So that's why learning to keep a balance between your cash is really important, because then when things go on sale, you can come in and scoop stuff up. You can buy a lot more assets than just always being invested. If you're always going to sit in BTC, you're going to have a tough time really trading around the intermediate term sell-offs. No, that's okay, Phil. That's always a question that keeps coming up. I mean, it's a balance. I think you just want to trade around both.
I mean, I think it's a question that keeps coming up because people really don't have an option. You either have to pay the fees to go to cash or you trade around in Bitcoin.
Right.
I mean, that's really the only options you have. And sometimes, you just have to take those fees to get to cash.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, I've always looked at, trading, commissions really matter, especially when you're day trading. I mean, gosh, I do 1,000 trades a day. There's times where I would pay $10 to Pershing clearing firm. It's $1,000 a day. You're paying. That adds up. But if we're talking about longer term positions, I mean, I never even considered paying the fee because, maybe it's 1%, even if it's Coinbase, like getting ripped off at 4 or 5%. that's a small price to pay. You know, if Bitcoin or whatever we're trading around drops by 20-30%, it's kind of a no-brainer. You know.
Yeah, you just gotta take into account, really.
I mean, that's kind of how I think about the commission. I'm just going to cover a little bit of Dragon so you guys can kind of see what I'm doing here. I was shorting a little bit of, call this Dragon for some of you guys that might not know. This pair, pound versus the yen, it's just one of the nicknames for this cross. But there's a pretty good bearish wall here, so my traders know this is showing you the power and the downside, and when we retraced about halfway of that here. So I was kind of fading it, and then I sold a pretty good chunk right there. And I think I want to see if we can get some follow through down here on pound versus the yen. Kind of did the same thing here on the euro, just putting some more shorts back out. I'm playing long dollars and short the lira over here. That's the Turkish currency. It's actually been crashing. Playing euro versus the pound a little bit also. Well, Alec, what news did you want to talk about? I mean, I think the majors, guys, it's going to be all very similar. I guess. Well, I'm being so schizo. Why don't we look at Litecoin real quick? I talked about price. Litecoin's back at 100. It's had some really strong rallies off of this last couple times it was back here. So kind of want to watch the same thing, guys, on that. Those are the intraday lows from February. We're kind of right at it. The longer term cycle, we already did turn up. That's the 8.6 wave. And then we don't have a turning point today, actually. Yeah, so that's interesting. I have the turning point basically today and yesterday on this 8.6 wave into the 20th. That would line up pretty good with a low. So the risk is kind of below 100, guys, on Litecoin. It's actually, you're going to retest the February lows, looks like, first versus BTC or even Ether. Ether is a long way away from its lows. It's had a different pattern, right? The lows in February were way up at 600 and then basically did a big inverse head and shoulders, with this being the head, and then this is kind of the right shoulder. And then typically you'll have a neckline. Doesn't really matter. The point is that the lower highs are up here, just like 10,000 on BTC. But this is a big spot. I mean, I'm okay with adding back here at 500 in a pretty good place. The pivot here on the intermediate terms. What level is that, Alex? 630, 625?
That's what it looks like.
Yeah, six and a quarter. If you can't hold the lows here though at 500, then obviously the next big picture level is the April lows. You guys can look and see what the numbers. It's 360, 365. But if you want to add here, makes sense. You know where you're wrong. Stop below the low. It doesn't mean you get out of all your position, but if I were to put on a pretty good chunk right here, I'd take it off if we can't hold this low, and then just wait, maybe put that size back on deeper. And then I just talked about Bitcoin Cash, everybody's favorite. It's kind of doing this. I mean, there's a good chance, guys, that the market's going to hold here. I mean, this would be the left shoulder. There's the inverse head. Again, there's your right shoulder. And then that's long-term pivot on the up in addition to 1200. But what I was what I was talking about in our room just before we got on here was that this intermediate term, like hourly chart, it's kind of a no-brainer. We were making sales into this 1150 area on the 5th and 6th just because of the cycle, and it was just overbought. So if you bought stuff well here below 1,000, it made sense to come out of some, up at these levels. And then so if you made sales there, I mean, now you get a chance to put some back on 17% discount. That's going to beat just the buy and hold approach for sure. And this was another example too, guys. If you just swapped into BTC, I mean, let's look at the drop in Bitcoin, but you're going to experience the same kind of drop if you just sold your Bitcoin Cash, right? And you went to BTC up here. You just lost the same amount of purchasing power by thinking that BTC is money, when in fact the dollars held their value. BTC dropped in addition. So now you could buy more Bitcoin Cash, you buy more BTC, but the trader that's in the dollars that understands that relationship is in a much better position. But at the same time though, guys, like you don't want to be swapping out a BTC if you like an alt down here. That's not probably the greatest unless you don't have any dollars, right? Or you don't have any tether, then you can make that call that maybe salt rallies more than Bitcoin. But the idea is to really go to dollars when BTC, the overall market, is kind of had a good run or is overbought. And then when you get to levels like we like right now, 6,000, 6,500 on BTC, this is when you want to be kind of adding to those positions. It's kind of a dance. All right. Well, what news we got, Alec? That you had a couple good topics.
Yeah, you're able to pull up the stories.
Yeah, let me go to River. We'll come back to where we are at on a relative value basis, like BTC versus Bitcoin Cash. Yeah, so Quebec, we were going to talk about halts crypto mining approvals. This was pretty big. I want you to tell people kind of what we ran into.
Yeah, I think that kind of just shows the demand, longer term, because these guys aren't looking right now. These miners aren't looking for the next month. They're looking ahead. I mean, especially some of these larger operations that you can't just invest that sort of money and not be looking long term.
Yeah.
I know we got that. We know a few people up in Quebec. They're trying to open something like 100,000 miners, and they were denied power access.
And so, what's the state just doesn't want to share the electricity, right?
Yeah, that extra power. I mean, they had most of the power, but just a little extra that they are not willing to approve. I mean, I think mining demand's at an all-time high right now. Taking a look at a few of the other charts, but I think it just shows the longer term, and they're ignoring the short-term trend.
Yeah. Well, and it does bring up the issue of proof of work also.
Yeah, Henry. There's one up in upstate New York. It's crazy. Yeah, 700 million.
And those guys get crazy kilowatts, like 2 cents, 2 or 3 cents.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Like all these people are calling about the space is dead or it's going to sit down here for a while. I just can't see that with this kind of money being just thrown at it.
Yeah. And then we had, you want to talk, let's see. Oh. So this was new news to me that you were telling me, Alex, as far as these SEC creating a whole. I guess you would have thought they would have had to just to to cover the whole this brand new asset class.
Yeah, some guy lost money at Ripple, and I think it's a class action. So it's not even tied to the SEC. It's just a class action suit.
This will really force their hand to get involved and make some decisions, I guess, on some of these bigger coins, whether they were securities, they are securities.
Yeah, I think it'll kind of force the hand, won't it? I mean, asking an opinion on if it's a security or not is probably the basis of what this lawsuit's going to be.
I mean, I don't know how you could not.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if they've been ignoring it or
They're kind of trying to put it off. I think Ripple actually hired the company. Ripple hired 2 previous SEC members for their part of their defense team.
I think I saw that. Or one was, I guess, CFTC.
I mean, I don't see how it's not going to be deemed a security. I don't know how they'll enforce it, but all these ICOs and Ripple, I mean, I can't see how it's not going to be.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's positive for this space. I'd rather just kind of get it over with. It's like rip the Band-Aid off and let's figure out what the regulation is, and it'll just help the institutional money get in.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the SEC appointed a new chief too, like new crypto chief, pretty much.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was
kind of neutral news. They kind of have a neutral stance on it. Get rid of the scams, but
yeah.
But I mean, we've seen so many people get those subpoena with the beginning of the year.
Yeah,
launched so many of them. But then none of them are really negative. It was just the fact that they wanted to see what was going on, how these groups operated. Look at that. An ICO just started.
Hey. No, that's true. And it may be easier for the entrepreneurs to know what the rules are if they want to raise money. And I think there was a lot of velocity of money in the space around, obviously, ICOs. And I think it's kind of really came to a halt. I mean, if we could chart the velocity of money in crypto, that was what's so great about the capital was moving around in these different projects. Whereas if you look at the velocity of money just in the overall economies, it's been declining ever since 2007.
Mm-hmm.
And then now, of course, the regulations kind of thrown that same wrench into everything since December, January. Everybody's kind of on hold. I mean, we've experienced that a little bit talking to investors and
no regrets.
Went on. Take them the rest of the year to figure it out.
Yeah, at least for people to feel more comfortable going public again, because a lot of them are just going private. They're just saying, "Well, why even deal with this?"
Yeah. Which is kind of a shame because it's just so slow. That's what's great about the ICO market is the speed at which we can get these projects and these entrepreneurs can start working on stuff. Hit 20 trillion. Yeah, that's pretty good. Where are we at on market cap these days?
Oh man, I think it's 300 billion.
Let's see. I thought the Bitmain news is pretty. Those are some big numbers.
Yeah, they really are.
So they are doing an IPO. Are they going to be one of the first? They got to be one of the first. I mean, I don't know of any really publicly traded crypto type of firms. You guys? I mean, there's a couple like over the counter quasi investment firms that are trading kind of like closed end funds, but I mean, this is probably one of the first big IPOs.
Yeah, that's some serious money.
Oh yeah, read that. Where are they going to list? Chinese exchange?
I would think so. Yeah, 20 trillion
article.
I don't think so.
Well, I mean, the way I look at it, I have to go back and look at the numbers exactly, but okay, so we're at. This is crazy. We're not even at 300 billion.
I mean, when you think of it, it's just such a small number when you think about it. What Apple probably has that much cash on hand.
Oh, it's insane. The market is so cheap right now, right? I mean, we were at 700, 800.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the intraday high was. All right, so on the highs, we're basically 700 billion, let's call it, right? So if you look at there's different ways to measure it, but if you look at M1, M2, you could look at the market cap of like the euro, cash on deposit or circulating cash in dollars. You could look at um, you could combine the gold markets, but it's probably, if you look at crypto on a quote unquote currency valuation or relative valuation scenario, and I think it's much bigger, but this is just a simple way to kind of catch I guess the low end of the valuation spectrum. I mean, Bitcoin's obviously disrupting way more industries, right?
Mm-hmm.
Remittances, all this stuff that we talk about, merchant services potentially. But if we just look at it in terms of the FX or competing with the dollar or gold or combining a combination of those, call it 200 trillion. If you just get 2% of that market is 4 trillion, so guys, how many X is that? So, okay, so let's say the entire crypto market goes to 4 trillion in the next couple of years. That's more than 10X, right? We're sitting at 300 billion. So 10X would be 3 trillion. So we'll just call it 10X to keep it simple, right? 12X. But 10X from here with Bitcoin, just say it keeps its same market share at 40%. I mean, it's easily 10X from here. I don't think you're going to get that big of a shakeout between BTC being the leader or not the leader, Ethereum falling off the face of the planet in just a couple years.
Yeah.
That's the way
No, I mean, that's interesting to think about just at the very low end. And that doesn't take into account that there's no borders or age restrictions I mean, there's nothing.
yeah.
You don't have to, I mean, there's no restrictions at all.
So if we look at, I mean, capturing something more realistic, like 10% of that 200 trillion, I mean, that's probably where Novogratz is coming up with. What did he say? 20 trillion? That makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I think he said 20 trillion and then it'll feel like our bubble.
yeah.
So
And
that's
then,
not even that.
and his point was that prices can even overshoot that.
Exactly. Yeah, that's just when it'll start. That's the next hype cycle where it's going to feel like it's a bubble, but that'll pop and it'll even get bigger than that. But that's just the next target is kind of how I thought about it.
Yeah. I mean, because at 20 trillion and BTC, if it has 40% market share,
Even if it doesn't even have that, it could have a quarter of that still.
yeah, or half.
Yeah. Which I think that it is going to happen because I think it was just announced this morning too. Binance is opening euro pairs, so you can actually buy in with euro. So stuff like that just going to keep reducing the Bitcoin dominance. If you can just buy an altcoin with euro,
Yeah.
dollars is probably going to be next.
I mean, if you start talking about 20 trillion market cap, whether it's takes 7 years to get there, it'll probably happen a lot faster than that. But I guess what is that? It's probably between like 500,000 to 700,000 BTC, depending on the supply at that point and its dominance, its market cap versus all the whole space.
Yeah.
Yeah. The premiums are, Mitch. That's a good point. How do you measure that? How are you looking at on Bit? Those other exchanges will measure that stuff. Yeah, Allison, you're probably right. There definitely probably will be a lot less. But I mean, if we're just taking the percentage.
Think there's going to be less cryptocurrencies in the future, not more?
Oh
Man,
well, I think she's saying the number of coins will be less, but the number of different projects or blockchains could probably be less.
I don't know.
But the volume of a fewer amount of players that actually exist. I don't know. You could say, well, like the .coms, there were so many .com companies, 80% of them go out of business. You're left with, you know, the real dominant players that lasted the last 15.
Yeah, but I think before that, we're going to see tens of thousands of different projects.
Yeah, I can see that too.
I don't even think we've gotten close to market saturation. I mean, when you look at the market cap, I mean, there's no way that we're even close to that.
Right. What if all these companies decide they want to build their own blockchains for all these different
Oh,
things?
and then on that, I can't imagine the thousands of small to medium sized businesses after that
Yeah.
follow suit.
How many paper ledger accounting systems are there right now?
I mean, look, I mean, what Starbucks has already said they wanted to do one. A few other fast food places. I mean, it's
Yeah, and then Novograt's whole argument was like the decentralized Uber. Well, if Uber's listening to his talk, they're like, "Oh shit! Well, we just need to come up with our own blockchain. Then why would we get put out of business by somebody else that uses our business model but incorporates a blockchain and a token? Uber is just going to come up with their own, you know."
I'm surprised that you bring that up. That I was listening to that, and I was kind of surprised he used the example he used for like Uber, decentralized Uber, and he was
Mm-hmm.
talking about about how the token pricing can like bring in a network effect and everything, which I agree with. It's like
Yeah,
it's like marketing, but he didn't really talk about how he just cuts out Uber completely. He didn't even say it just we just cut out the company completely. There's no Uber anymore. It's just a protocol.
yeah.
It
I
seems like a
think
simple
I don't.
answer that he didn't say. He started talking about token economics and
Well, what was his point? I mean, I think he said that the driver and the car and the physical crap doesn't go away. He's just saying that um,
yeah.
there's the companies that build an ecosystem almost like an equity around their token have a huge advantage.
Yeah, but the person was I think the person kind of directly asked him like, why should he care? I don't know.
Oh yeah, the guy
It
in
seemed
the
like a
audience.
it seemed like a weird way to answer it. I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of know what you mean. Kind of watching Cardano here too. I want to see it hit 15 or 14 cents. I already got a little bit anxious and bought some at 18, so I'd like to pull the trigger again, probably 15 cents. Step right in front of that 14-cent level.
Yeah, Jack, there's literally no reason most companies need a blockchain, but that's not going to stop them.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what do you mean by the need. I mean, we don't. I mean, is every household going to need to own uh, IBM's blockchain? No, but
No.
the stuff that they might want to do in house on a private blockchain makes a lot of sense. I mean, I don't know. I don't see how anybody will be doing business and running their accounting and stuff, and half of their. Why wouldn't you do it on the blockchain? I mean, it's just.
I can see like a lot of like tokenization. A lot of people kind of downplay it, but making like a real world asset liquid, or at least more liquid than it is right now, where you can
Yeah,
trade it in liquidity pools, secondary markets. I mean, I
yeah,
don't
and
know.
then
Just the cost savings alone of issuing and distributing them and trading them.
yeah. Well, I think it's going to be like a side, just like lots of companies have warrants or they have
Mm-hmm.
options or they have bonds and they have stock and equity. You're going to, these companies are going to be like, why don't we have a token?
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about it that way, there's going to be a hell of a lot more tokens.
I mean, right now, when you think about how you have to get like a security, right, or a share or a stock, where you have to go through a third party to get it. There's no way, and they keep custody of it most of the time to trade them around. When now you could just cut out the middleman, and there's less friction. More people can participate in it. More people can own it.
I mean, it's kind of cool. Like, you could be standing in your driveway and your neighbor's like, I don't know, I've had this coin for forever. You want it? Like, sure. And just send it right over on your phone.
I mean, you could be paying with a small percentage of a share. Like you say, we tokenize a farm. You could be paying a lunch. You pay your lunch with just a fraction of a share.
Yeah.
If everything's just converted, and it's just cool concepts to think about.
I mean, who's going to mine all that? It's the same computers. I mean, it's not like somebody's got to sit in you don't have to hire a whole IT department to look at accounting books. You just run it on the machines.
And mining, I mean, there's enough computational power right now to run it all. It's just people are competing for the money right now.
Yeah, and proof of work is not the end all be all. It does not work.
Yeah, I think proof of work has its place to, there needs to be some sort of reserve currency everything's based on for crypto. But like from there, I think it'll be interesting. We'll see what Casper come in late fall.
And there's probably a lot of these companies that'll go the licensing route and buy Hashcraft software and run it that way. It doesn't have to be a public blockchain that fits in the top 10, 25 market cap.
Yeah. Yep. People are going to figure out ways to do it cheaply and just.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. There's lots of different digital ledger technologies. I mean, the overall philosophy is we want to keep it decentralized if you're talking about a global currency. But if we're talking about private companies putting parts of their business on a blockchain, doesn't need to be. You wouldn't want that to necessarily be decentralized anyway.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah, like what Jack's saying, proof of work's the most secure option. Otherwise, you just run on a centralized. Yeah, that's true. But that's not going to stop people from trying to use a blockchain. I mean, there's still going to be tens of thousands of coins. Probably 100,000 coins before it really starts being shrunk and condensed.
I mean, I think I saw an interesting chart in Netscape. Like, Netscape went from like 1 million users to 5 million to 1 billion users.
Mm-hmm.
And we're basically at the same point that Netscape was. I mean, like, in this 20% of its market share as far as the user base is kind of where Bitcoin was.
Yeah. Yep.
That's nothing. Yeah, I like the real estate, Dan, being tokenized. That's coming. I mean, we're just talking about digital assets. I mean, it's going to be just as common as anything else digital.
Mm-hmm.
Dash.
Do you want to pull up? You said you want to pull up some relative value, see what everything's doing.
Yeah, for sure. Dash is at new lows. You'd be glad to hear that, huh?
I'm not glad to hear people lose money, but yeah, it shouldn't have been that high to begin with. I guess it's all about the network effect, though. So
yeah, they've done a pretty good job on the marketing side. 250 kind of was the old low, the old base. And that's had a crazy round trip that's been. Sucks if you bought a note up above 1,000. A little bit cheaper now.
they can pretty much set around the board, though.
LA Bitcoin trader faces 30 months in jail for illegal money business. Okay. What's Monero doing? Well, Chris, I mean, the entire point of a blockchain is not to be decentralized. I mean, when we talk about it in terms of like a world currency, of course, that's a big part of it. But if you want to talk about just digital ledgers, if you run your own company, I'm not putting my books out there for the world to see, but I also don't want people writing things down in pen and paper. The blockchain solves so much of that. There's totally there's all kinds of use cases for private blockchains or private digital ledgers. I'm not saying that the next monetary system should be based on centralized blockchains. I mean, that's the whole point of why we want to get away from the disaster with these central banks has been.
Yeah, I think the best use case is definitely the decentralized currencies like Bitcoin. I think easily Bitcoin's the best use case there can possibly be, but that doesn't mean that tokenizing through a legal contract onto an open blockchain like Ethereum can't improve what's already there. I mean, as long as it's an improvement from liquidity standpoint, friction, just trading in a trustless manner from peer to peer, that same, that same asset, I don't think it needs to completely change. Nothing's going to change as much as Bitcoin changed the financial system, but that doesn't mean there still aren't other use cases.
Yeah, Chris, I agree. I mean, you're slapping blockchain on the logo is pretty much nonsense. Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing if a government wants to come out and do a centralized currency and they call
Fedcoin.
Yeah, I mean, of course that's goofy. I'm just saying at the point there's lots of reasons why we're trying to fit blockchain into like it only has to be Bitcoin. It's crazy. There's lots of reasons why you could have a digital coin, why Amazon would want to have a digital coin that's not completely decentralized, but it still has a lot of value, even though it's not completely decentralized.
Yeah, I think I think Bitcoin's pretty much the best thing for blockchain. Obviously the best use case, but I think we still haven't seen some of the applications and what they can. I don't think we've seen the best applications yet either.
Yeah.
The best way is to decentralize things. I think it's just getting started.
Yeah. I don't know. It just seems to be a lot of.
Yeah, I think, they'll register with the SEC. I think it's going to be a blend between IPOs and ICOs. And I think that's pretty good. I think it'll be interesting, at least from a funding perspective and a trading perspective, at least. Yeah. Sure, it's not going to revolutionize the world, but revolutionize finance.
Zcash is back in the lows. Monero is actually trying to make a lower low. Today is going to be a big day to see where we close. Monero is back below its February low. I don't know. I think it's going to have a harder time. These privacy coins, I'm not so sure are going to weather some of the government pushback as well.
Yeah, that's the one frightening thing about, they can, if you live somewhere like here in the States where they can essentially make it illegal, you're not going to be trading it around.
Yeah.
But they are the most interesting.
Yeah, I don't know what the next big level is. Go back to that one. Aeon versus BTC is back to the bottom of its range. And it really ICO'd right at the wrong time.
Yeah, it probably depends on what they did with the funding and everything. But
I think Binance looks good here. EOS needs to hold the bands. NEO back on its lows. The rest of the market. Oh yeah, Taylor 0x. Yeah, I haven't looked at that one either today. Oh, that's bad of me. Euro's coming off a little bit more. Let's see if this 30-minute cycle rolls over on the euro. You guys looking at FX? Pay attention to that. I think with this big meeting with Kim Jong-un, that's at like 3 a.m. tomorrow, right? I think so. It's at 4 or 5, maybe. I don't know how much that's going to move FX. It probably will move the dollar a little bit. Euro kind of stuck at 118 right now. Yeah, 0x versus BTC looks good. I mean, anytime you can grab it near the bands in an uptrend, makes a lot of sense. Last 2 times, those were good spots to buy, and then try to lighten up when you get away from them. Kind of know where the trend's going to change. I guess that's below 13,000 sats. Marvin on metal. I haven't traded that one in forever. I think I'm thinking of what other coin am I thinking of that we used to?
You're thinking metal pay. Yeah, the hype from that exchange kind of really died down.
No, they used to be on. Did they take it off of Bittrex? I don't know. This was just making lower highs and more lower highs. I mean, you got the low from December in play. I guess you could play that as your backstop. There's not a lot of data here on these charts anymore.
Oh, they did take it off Bittrex. You gotta remember that.
Yeah, there's a lot more data there. What do you have to do to get taken off the exchange? I mean, I wouldn't be puking here right into these lows. That's definitely where your risk is. You get above the 8, maybe you go back towards the bands, the 200 up here. About a 50% retrace of the move down here. There's really nothing long-term bullish unless you start making higher highs. What does that mean?
I'd assume it probably had to be something with like how they use the token. It's like an interesting token, but it's like every user, every time you like use it, you get a certain amount of metal. So they actually pay you to use their exchange or their platform. And I don't think Bittrex, I think they probably just figured, well, it's clearly a security. Let's just get rid of it before we have problems. I'd assume something like that. Which I love how they're able to like make that, difference between that's security and everything else isn't. But
right, it's kind of goofy. Steam is kind of looking interesting. V-Chain's another one that's making long-term higher lows. It's been one of the stronger charts. You got 2 higher lows standing in the way of the April lows. Probably supposed to be a buyer all the way back to the 200 here on V-Chain. Yeah, Walton's been really sideways. Gas is getting pretty cheap too. If you get gas, I mean, I'm going to be all over it if you give me back towards these December lows. This is just such a cheap price just relative to Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Unless you think Neo is just going to go away, which I kind of find hard to believe.
Well,
IOTA, chart's pretty strong too.
mm-hmm.
I just wanted to look at a Misego. Ooh, what's the Nexus doing? Pretty good. Hold coin did, Dan? Oops. That sucks. Yeah, I haven't heard it. Neo has been kind of quiet. I've kind of see some stuff go through their Twitter feed. Misego has a pretty big cycle confluence right here in a couple weeks. It's probably going to line up pretty well with if it continues to test a little bit lower, finds its triple bottom kind of in that same time frame. That's kind of what I sold a little bit up here, probably put that back on a little bit lower. And Neo really close to making a lower low. I mean, whether it's 42 or 41, I mean, I would just call it $40 as kind of the support. I mean, I wouldn't freak out just because it breaks a low by $1. Cryptos trades so much volatility that these ranges are so wide, it's kind of tough to freak out over one point. That whole base in December before the breakout was the mid 30s. I mean, if you're buying Neo, anything with a 3 handle, a 30 handle, pretty good long term spot. I mean, there was a lot of hype to Allison's point up here. Got to kind of be patient though when buying lower lows.
Well, you just want to pull a few more coins here? I think someone just said nano.
Yeah. So this would be one of the coins that's actually been making lower lows. So technically, this is in a long-term bear market. So you got to be a little bit patient when it's tough to buy stuff. Overall, it's just making lower lows. I mean, we talked about there was a bullish engulfing kind of right here where you might have ran some stops, but then you got zero follow through. You couldn't even get above the 8. So I think this is one where you can just kind of, if you want to nibble, but man, it's just there's no rush to get long here until you can start turning the corner a little bit. I mean, that kind of looks like, I mean, what does that look like? It looks like, some bigger candles above the 8 and turn the 8 back up. Kind of gets you more on the right-hand side of the cycle. Right now, it's these lower lows tend to go tend to go further than you think. We don't have that chart versus Tether or anything versus the dollar, do we? Oh yeah, on HIP we do.
Not a lot of data though.
I guess though, if you really like this name, the good thing is that it's at $3. So, you know, it could still lose 50%, 80% of its value from here. But if you're not concerned about necessarily a percentage drop and you just figure out what you're willing to lose back to zero, I mean, it's going to be tough for any coin to just go to zero and stay at zero. I mean, even if it was a shit coin and never amounted to much, you'd still have some pretty good bounces off the lows. So if you figure if it's 5,000, 10,000 you were willing to lose on this play or whatever that number is, you can kind of scale in maybe over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 entries and kind of work your average cost down. And at least you know where the floor is. I mean, that's kind of my thinking on Salt. I think Salt's a lot more established than this project. But the point being is that that's kind of the nice thing when you get a coin back to zero. You kind of know where the floor is. You get a coin that's trading up at 1,000. You know, it's just a lot of distance before you try to figure out where the floor is. You have to find different points of risk. When I have a coin that's just making lower lows, there's nothing really to look at here, right? I mean, this candle is pretty much useless. You don't even know if that really traded there. So the only thing you can really look at to figure out where your risk is the zero level, zero bound. So I guess that would be the only thing I'd say about Nano. I think you can just be really patient. It's probably going to be more about when the market turns is when you'll get this to finally take off. Alec, are you doing anything on that coin?
On Nano? Yeah, hold a little bit. It's got potential at least. There's a lot of hype. It kind of died down. It just cycled right back. I haven't been looking at these spreads. Have these spreads been coming in at all? It seems like they still get pretty wide. I mean, here's the Canadian versus Gemini. Over 5% between bid ask. Oh, you want us to take a look at the Zencash? I don't hold any Zencash. I would recommend holding it either.
I had some miners that got put into it a little bit.
I mean, yeah, besides that.
I was trying to get them out of it. We made some okay sales up here. I mean, we talked about maybe you held high, and obviously it couldn't. So I think if you like this name or you're looking to play it long, I mean, it broke this trend line right here. So every technician that loves a trend line is going to have that as breaking. But it seems like the majority of the supports, I mean, probably going to test this 20 level, maybe 15. It's basically 20, 15, and 10 is the support. It's probably going to keep falling until the market turns. I mean, I would maybe give it a shot at 15 or 150,000 sats, however you want to say it. 15 handle looks pretty good.
Yeah, I know Zencash has some things coming up, but they got hit 30 blocks deep, reorganized. I mean, that's crazy. And then they just refunded everything. So it's pretty centralized. And super nodes, I don't know, those don't excite me at all. It just sounds even more centralized.
This is just a great example of why you want to guys be ringing the register on new highs. If you make that a part of your trading philosophy, I'm telling you, the amateurs and even really bad professional traders, they always are chasing the new highs. They want to chase. They don't know what to do when there's red on their screen. Instead of buying more when prices are down, they want to wait for confirmation. They're unsure. They wait, and then they finally get new highs and they chase it. But as a rule of thumb, the good trader is buying the pullback and then coming out on the new high. So when you get new highs, that's where you want to be taking profit. So if you did that on this anywhere up here, I mean, doesn't matter what the noise is, doesn't matter what the storytelling is, doesn't matter what the hype is. If you just took profit on strength and you move from here to a new high and you take some profit, I mean, you didn't need to know that there was a hack to coming, and you just risk managed that position, really, really well. I was taking just because the cycle was high right here. And I just thought this position for some of our guys was just way too heavy. But yeah, maybe you give it a shot again down here in this zone.
Such privacy. Good.
CND. Yeah, Sander, you're welcome. CND. That's a coin, right?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard of this one. Should I know this one? Who are these guys?
I think I looked at them before. Nothing too exciting.
Here's the old base. Here's the breakout. So obviously this went nuts with the rest of the market. And then we're already through these lows. So this is just, you could nibble in here. Maybe you hold these lows. Maybe you got to actually test this entire base again. But it's very similar to the overall market. The intermediate term is still down. So anytime you go contrarian, guys, it's just if you like stuff that you want to pick up and you don't have an intermediate term uptrend like you do here, I mean, all of this is intermediate term bullish. Even right here, this was intermediate term bullish. Here's downtrend. This is bullish. This is back to downtrend. So when you don't have the right-hand side of the chart, as I call it, right here, and you got to be patient. So, you can buy here, you can buy here. You buy stuff well, it pops, you come out of it. And then what you really want to see is the intermediate term stop making lower lows and then start making higher highs. And then that's when you can be more aggressive on the dips. But we're still getting intermediate term downtrend on that name. I'd watch these lows. Let's see what level that is. 36. 3.5 cents.
I don't know. I remember taking a look at their website. I didn't read through everything too much, but hybrid intelligence for effective asset management. Financial analysts enhanced by artificial intelligence.
Well, you could say the same thing, though. I mean, great. Still had a huge run, You can trade it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
You can trade it. I mean, I don't know anything about these guys either. I don't put big chunks, guys, of your capital into stuff that's like I talked about the other day is maybe. If it's a maybe, meaning like, maybe it's gonna be the blockchain that is the king of the hill, then I'll put big capital into it. If it's a name that's like I have no idea if these guys are even gonna be around in 3 months. You can trade it, but it's hard to, you're just asking to wake up one day and be cut in half if you put any type of big money into it.
Yeah. And I'll just say one more thing about that is they have like levels. So you actually have to pay, it's like a few $100,000 to get different levels of intelligence. Like, I don't know. It seems kind of a little sketchy, but like you said, it's kind of interesting here in the fundamentals. And then you're showing on the chart that doesn't really matter as long as you hedge your risk, that 51% attack, for instance, as long as you had your management, it didn't even matter.
Right. So you could take a little bit of capital. That's what kind of is amazing about crypto. You can take a little bit of capital on a name when the market gets hot and there's a 200% gain. By the dip, there's another 280% gain into this high. And then there's another 300% gain on that third leg. So you can take a small amount of money and parlay it into something big, but then, the bigger parts of your portfolio, obviously you want to keep in the top 25 or top 50 in market cap. So, I mean, it's just tough that's the same for a small cap stock or anything else. It's just a lot of risk. But I do I'm not opposed to trading really anything, especially these little names that have really big moves. You gotta put the right amount of capital behind it from the beginning. I have some crazy moves on that. Yeah, the relative value stuff.
Yeah, Sander, what are your favorite picks? I think it depends. I think it depends on what you're looking for. You're looking at a longer term, shorter term. I think people are always trying to look for the new best thing. And I think long term, people keep overlooking just Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin.
Yeah, I think the philosophy on that is you would feel pretty stupid if you didn't have any money in Bitcoin and Bitcoin ends up being $1 million one day.
Yeah.
You'd feel pretty stupid if it went to 300,000 and you didn't trade it. If you said to yourself, "Oh, I miss Bitcoin. I want to find the next Bitcoin," and you went around sticking your nose into every little weed trying to find the flower, you're end up trying to pick a winner that may or may not end up being the big home run, and then you miss the entire market moving up. That's what I don't really care about the debate of is Bitcoin going to be at the top of the king of the mountain? Is it Ethereum? Is it going to be Cardano? Is it going to be something that hasn't even come around yet? If you just stick with the overall market, guys, and you trade around half a dozen to a dozen names at a time, but you just stay with whatever is is grabbing the market share of the overall industry. You're going to stay in the leaders, and you're going to do well as that entire market cap moves up. If you're trying to find, that's okay. I mean, if you want to find some projects that have really good potential, but it's not like you can go stick up. And I guess you can if you wanted to be really aggressive and put a bunch of your capital behind.
I think if you're going to do that, if you're going to push a bunch of capital, I think you have to push it where the developers are, what they're interested in. You start following all these developers on Twitter and you start following what they're excited about, what they comment on, what they're interested in. And you take a look at what it is, Bitcoin, Monero, Zcash, Enigma, Omize Go, 0x, IOTA. I think you have to hedge with, some of these silly graphs, but I think you kind of just have to see what everyone's excited about. ARC, Aeon, these, interconnected blockchains, all these other little projects, they come and go because they have a development team of probably at most 10 to 15 when, Ethereum has 10,000, and then it gets to a point, depends what you're looking at.
Yeah. So, my best picks at the moment, well, we just talked about the majors already, but I think just from a trading perspective, I like Salt down here, like Cardano a little bit lower towards 15 cents. So that was the same game plan when we had massive rallies off the lows last time. When we bought Salt really well, we bought Cardano.
I have a few smaller ones. Like I like Pearl Oyster. It got hit pretty hard though, but I've been dollar cross, averaging in. But like I said, I use it as kind of a hedge against all these other major projects where they're using the Tangle, which I think you kind of have to hedge yourself in the, even the more experimental technology.
That's smart. Or you group them in like we talked about before. Like
exactly. Yep. Exactly.
Why didn't the data fall off on this?
Yeah, I got hit pretty big, but I wasn't looking short term with this one. The bottom's at 0. That's where the bottom is. That's where the floor is.
So I got a question for you. So on these altcoins, if we're if you're pricing in BTC, then they can go negative in theory, right?
Relatively, yeah.
All right. If the coin is, I don't know, you guys are smarter than me on the math side. If that coin is really low and then Bitcoin goes to 500,000, are we going to have alts in the negative versus? I mean, that's what's crazy about when you want to value it versus BTC.
Yeah, one Satoshi.
One sat and then that's it. Mm.
Yeah, that's true.
All the all the majors guys have come in pretty close. They're all trading pretty close together. Bitcoin Cash was sticking out on the 5th or 6th. It's kind of why I was lighting it up there. Litecoin still looks pretty cheap on a relative value basis. Oh, they're all trading pretty tight right now. Yeah, no, it might be right. It might be right, Phil. I mean, at some point it's probably going to bottom and absolutely rip. My point is that when you're making lower lows, you got to be patient. You can nibble. It's just the different way to trade when something's making lower lows versus something that making higher lows. You can be more aggressive on the pullbacks. There's other things you can do, like when something's dropping and then it really goes vertical and you create a lot of distance below like the 200 and then you get a big fat like bottoming tail. That's the time where you can get more aggressive and play a low, I'll buy a bottoming tail like that pretty hard. And then I know my risk is right below the bottom, the tail of that bar.
Yeah, people dumping Nano before an exchange listing. I don't think it's really bizarre because if you kind of see how that coin evolved price wise with the amount of hype and the amount of excitement there was for it, it was pretty ridiculous. It was more so than any other coin I've seen in a long time. And I think when you get that many people going in expecting so much to overtake Bitcoin, overtake this, overtake that, you're just going to see even a bigger rejection.
Yeah. Let's see what else I want to look at. On a relative value basis, yeah, the spreads are coming in.
All right, well, do you want to wrap this up? Pretty much hit everything.
Yeah, that's probably good. Go grab some lunch.
Yep. Well, you guys can follow us both on Twitter. I put both of them in the description. So if you want to hear any of our ideas, trades, or just get updates, and we're going to go live next.
Yeah, and if you guys are trading around Forex, it's something that I've been training a lot of traders for a long time. So we definitely trade that market. We've gotten some pretty good energy in crypto since Sunday, relatively versus the last 2 weeks. But I mean, It's as crypto's still developing. I mean, it's not the greatest market to day trade when it gets quiet. So we do a lot of work on Forex side, but and there's a lot of some. It was kind of interesting. I put one of my accounts up here on my FX book. Or if you guys want to follow along, it's just there's not a lot of good traders out there. There's a lot of stuff that's misleading. I was looking at some of the top performers in some of these communities, and most of them claim they have bots, and then they never close out any trades, or they have a really big couple months, and then they literally try to pull out like 1% a month, and I don't know, it's kind of a shame. So I've kind of wanted to lead in the community a little bit and how to actually show people transparently how to work a position, and kind of what we do every day. So we're going to be a lot more, I guess, vocal as far as it goes on FX and some of this stuff. I'm probably going to put together a white label too, and do some signal providing for the Forex market so people can actually follow along on their MT4 or whatever. I think we can do pretty well on a lot of the charts in this space.
Yeah. And, if you want to hear more than just talking about these markets, but if you actually want to be live twice a week when we actually trade it live, you can go to the links for the first one in the description. But, we talk 24/7 in the chat room, position updates, and when we're not in the coaching.
Yeah. I mean, we're trading anything that moves,
Yep.
Whether it's treasuries or doesn't really matter. Whatever's moving, but strong dollar has been where a lot of the alpha's been lately. So if you guys are interested in that, just jenkinsrm.com is the educational side of what we do. So if you go to that chat room, it's free to come on in there and just message us. All right. For some of you guys that are on the coaching side, we'll talk to you in the morning, and I'll talk to you guys in the chat.
Yep. So check out the link and give us both a follow. Till next time, guys.
All right. I'll talk to you.